Good morning, everybody. John Sviokla here for GAI Insights, giving you the top news rated essential, important, or optional, putting thoughts in your head and time in your day. Please subscribe to our channel if you find this useful. Also, remember, you can always follow along with GAIinsights.com/articles. And today we've got Adam Rappaport, Tim Andrews, and Ankash Handa. So lots going on this week. Fantastic new announcements. So Ankash, could you start us off with the first one, please?
Sure, John. Okay. Yeah. So the first one that we have for today comes from Amazon, and it talks about the general availability of multi-agent collaboration on Amazon Bedrock.
Yeah, really big commitment here. Good case study in the middle of this thing as well. What'd you think, Adam?
I'd say this is at least important news. There are so many people on Amazon, and this was a missing piece of their puzzle. We have Operator from OpenAI, Manos that we just talked about the other day. There are new open source versions coming. Anthropic has MCP, which is probably, I think, in my opinion, the most mature and leading sort of agentic framework at this point. But this is Amazon's tool that allows you to have agents effectively pass things off between each other and run these larger frameworks. So it's a big deal. It's an important thing, aspect of their infrastructure that was sorely needed. So especially given how many people are using AWS as their cloud provider, this is at least important news. If someone wanted to argue for why this was essential, I might be convinced, but I think it's in some ways keeping up with the competition. So important.
We're getting important here, Tim. What do you think? There's also this lovely thing by Syngenta.
Yeah.
Cropwise AI conversation.
Yeah, the Syngenta thing's okay. I was sort of leaning a little bit the other way. I mean, this is a product announcement at the end of the day, and it's kind of a Me Too product announcement. And most of it's already out. In fact, all of it's out pretty much. They just switched from beta to general availability. I think it's an important area. I agree that AWS is a big player here. I think actually they're ahead in many cases in their orchestration and infrastructure capacities for enterprises, which are like the security stuff, lots of stuff that's in here.
Sure.
That I don't think Google and Microsoft are as good at. You know, it didn't send me, as my wife says. So I can go along with important. It's a big company and it's an important trend, but it's a product announcement.
Yeah, let's go ahead with important. I'm good with important. Ankash, next.
Some good points, though, Tim. Thanks. I could have been talked down to optional at that point.
Okay, the next one again comes from AWS, and it talks about a new use case where Verisk is using GenAI for insurance policy reviews.
Yeah, Verisk here using their Mozart product, which coordinates a number of things, marking out material differences in the different things like here we have auto dealers coverage form as anybody's bought insurance, lining this stuff out. What'd you think here, Tim?
So I'm going to tell a quick story, which is I actually have a video that Bill Gates made. He used to make a Christmas video, a hilarious Christmas video, Hollywood style, every year in the 90s. And in 95, when he was making fun of the internet, there was this whole room full of computers and a guy screaming at the top of his lungs, "This is fantastic. Now I can use a $12,000 computer instead of a 32-cent stamp." And there's a little bit of that in here. It's like, okay, I do so. And I'll be more serious. I have worked in insurance. This is a big issue because the papers change all the time. The contracts change all the time. The nitty gritty of it is ridiculous. It's not entirely clear to me, though, how much the Gen AI adds on top of it. They made some claims and the claims were good. So it's a decent use case. So I'm probably going to argue for important because it's a decent use case, as Amazon usually does. And there is some statistics about gains. But as just an emotional reaction, I was like, Really, I think I could build this with diff, which is the difference between two files, and a couple of extra things, and not have to put all this extra orchestration on. But I'll give it an important, because maybe not. Maybe I'm just being too snarky this morning.
Yeah, I was going to go more optional. Its accuracy rate, if I remember right, is 90%, which is insufficient for this task.
Yeah, that was the thing. It wasn't terrifically over the top, and did seem like, my other phrase that I've been using for decades is, you don't want to use a front end loader to dig a garden ditch.
Well, there you go. What do you think here, Adam? Important?
I can go optional here. Particularly, we've seen so many phenomenal use cases out of Amazon. This is probably not one of the worst.
Not the best.
It's not even one of the better ones. Yeah, but it's an important.
Good for the study of the architecture. That's what's great about it. The architecture's right there.
Yeah, I was thinking laterally. There's other ways you could
generally how to build a serverless, a Lambda architecture with OpenSearch and an LLM. Good architecture.
We can go optional. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All righty, optional it is. Next.
Okay, the next one comes from Microsoft, and it talks about semantic telemetry, understanding how users interact with AI systems.
Yeah, I love this phrase here, semantic telemetry. As a recovering consultant, we have licenses to make up words. I thought this was kind of cool. I was between optional and important on this one. The notion of fundamentally creating, I think of it as an ontology for the semantics of interaction, and to use the models to create a classifier, and then use those classifiers to improve performance. I think it's pretty interesting. I'm surprised that this is novel at all. I thought they were already doing this, but I guess the classification helps. There weren't a lot of performance statistics in this thing, so I don't know. I was on the fence between optional and important. What do you guys think?
I was in the optional camp. It is interesting, but there's a huge set of assumptions, as you said, and it's kind of light on the results. So I tend to be a little skeptical, and I could be wrong, because you have to go into all the papers that they used for their assumptions, because they made a huge number of assumptions about how they're going to do this to make it useful. And then they say, see, it's useful. Okay, maybe.
Right.
But I would say optional for the AI leader.
I was optional as well. It's interesting. To your point, John, I wonder to what extent this has been done just without LLMs up till now, possibly for decades, but not something I had thought much about. I can see where this will become even more relevant and important in the near future.
Yes,
but it's basically interesting research at this point. So
yeah, I do think. I mean, it got me thinking about. Okay, well, dialogue. As we talked about before, dialogue is the operating system of society, and here we're analyzing dialogue, and dialogue with our machines, is only occasionally captured and used. You know what I mean? So I thought that part of it was kind of cool. But yeah, optional it is. All right, Akash, next.
Okay, the next one that we have comes from HBR, and it talks about how GenAI could change the value of expertise.
All right, two dear friends of mine, Mike Fenlon and Joe Fuller. Joe is one of the guys who started Monitor with his brother Mark. And then I don't know Matt. Fenlon actually was chief people officer at the U.S. branch of Pricewaterhouse when I was there. Very good guy. Now over at the what is it? I want to say Black Glass Institute, but that's not it. Anyway, now at a think tank. What do you think here, Tim?
I thought this was okay. I could give this an important. They made some good points. I agreed with some of their stuff. I disagreed with some of their stuff, but I think it's an important topic, and they did a decent job explaining and arguing it. So it's a good paper to read. This is not one where I think the robots could have done better. They made a good argument.
Yeah,
and I think
Sorry.
Yeah, the diamond-shaped organization, as you and I know,
There you
is something that people have been talking about, and I do think needs a little more attention and thinking through it. I could argue with some of the points they made about it, but on the other hand, it's absolutely true that if we eliminate entry-level jobs, we don't have entry-level jobs, and beyond the economic impact and the social impact, there's how do you get experienced people if you don't have entry-level people? I think there are ways to do that, but I think it is a real problem. And so I'd probably say important. It's a fairly straightforward read and a well-written article.
Yeah, Ankash, if you could scroll down a little bit, there's some nice graphics about the earning curve as a proxy for the learning curve.
Right.
If you go down.
Yep.
Which
John, unfortunately, I can't.
okay.
Not sure. For some reason, it's not showing me the entire article.
Okay, that's all right. Tim, I was going to make the argument for essential and the reason is that this issue of people development is so central to the general manager. You know what I mean? And when you look at these organizations, the whole issue of who you can hire, how quickly do they become productive, what does that do to your talent pipeline? For large organizations, this is right in the middle of what you do every day. You know what I mean? And so I just I think it is well argued. It's the best one argued I've seen in terms of some of the relationship among training, performance, the learning curve, and organization structure. And I think it's just the beginning of that. And I just think board of directors, a senior executive, they have to be worrying about this stuff now as they start to deploy these. What do you think, Adam?
So, John, I think why I didn't want to give it an essential is that it doesn't give enough practical advice about what to do. It does a phenomenal job of helping people understand the problems at hand and ways to think about them. To Tim's point, whether we agree with it or not, they're at a minimum very, very important things for them to be aware of and considering. I would have liked a little more guidance or thought leadership. If they put all this time into understanding it, they've probably thought more than we have about what we could do about it as an AI leader or for our organizations. And I just didn't feel there was enough of that kind of thought leadership in it. So not necessarily I have to read right now because they're going to have to go out and figure out what to do with it, but definitely an important read.
Yeah, I was also guarding against my own hubris, which can be monumental. Which is, I thought the stuff I've written on it's better, but whatever, because it doesn't really tell you what to do with this stuff. I agree with you. I'm okay. The topic's essential. I agree with you. And the funny thing is, Joe is very, Joe and Mike both, but more Joe are very practical people. I don't know, maybe they did it and the editor cranked it down, but there are some, and we're already starting to see at some of our clients and some of our research sites, some emerging best practice here, right? Like how you onboard people. I love what Vivek's saying here. Expedited onboarding. You inherit a bunch of agents when you join. Sure, I mean that's one way, right? Start interacting with the agents. All right, important it is. Sorry about that, Joe and Mike. Going to live another day.
Okay, the next one comes from OpenAI, and this is the research around detecting misbehavior in frontier reasoning models.
Yeah, this kind of gave you the creeps. This one.
It sure did, didn't it?
The more you watch these models, the more they, the more they lie and dissemble. It's kind of creepy. So, especially given how important reinforcement learning has been in terms of improvement, in these models. And so now we've got, if you have reinforcement learning, it starts to, duck the evaluation. What do you think here, Adam?
Yeah, so this is, I think I'd put this as well into the interesting but maybe optional category. Not something necessarily an AI leader needs to be thinking about unless they're specifically currently training frontier models, which I mean that's going to come down into enterprise, but at this point it's probably optional for them. But it's fascinating, right? So the idea is that you can put in a supervisor or a monitor that follows the chain of thought thinking to understand whether or not the model is trying to take advantage of some sort of loophole or exploit the instruction that's been given to it. But they discovered that if you penalize them too much or over observe them, they'll actually just hide the thoughts from the observer. So like it just, if nothing else, might be important because it emphasizes how little we really know or understand what's going on inside of these boxes, for all of the speculation that people do about what we can produce out of them. It's absolutely fascinating.
Yep.
I mean, really kind of creepy when you read this thing. It's going down the chain of thought. It's like, oh well, to prove all that math stuff, that's really hard. Let's just let's figure out how to hack our way through this. I love the internal conversation. The kind of the conscience of the model. And then going underground. What'd you think, Tim? You optional?
Yeah, I think it's super creepy. I think it's one of my pound the table things, which is this is what happens when you get commercial for-profit companies leading your research, is they don't really care. I mean, this is interesting research, but it's not going to stop them from releasing products, right? And so this is, it's hard for me to rate it even important because it's there's nothing you can do. They're going to release these products. They have these problems. Maybe you could say, well, it's helpful to be aware of them, but we don't even know what the products are. Who is the crazy Defense Department secretary said, the unknown unknowns, right? There are so many unknown unknowns here that there is some reason to be a little nervous about this stuff. That could argue me into important just to scare people a little bit into saying, we just know a lot less about these things than we believe. And we have this sense of thinking mechanical things are mechanical. They don't have intent. And we can say what we want about birds fly and planes fly differently, but they still fly. So here we have the same thing. These things have some sort of semantics. Maybe it's just the stochastic semantics that they've learned on the web, and people are generally lazy and will cheat. And so they've inherited that tendency because it's clearly not intent. We don't know, but we don't think it's intent the way we think about intent. But the result is pretty startling. And that happens over and over again with these models. So it's a little nerve-wracking because you just don't know what to do. You can't sort of sit on the sidelines, and yet you don't know what it is you're getting involved with.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, all of these, anytime you have an evaluation function, there's intent in there. You know what I mean? You're optimizing something, and you're going against some kind of gradient within some kind of, environment, right? And it may not be optimal because the environment might be bigger than your algorithm, but you're progressing towards something, right?
Yeah. There's a loss function, but the amazing thing, as Adam pointed out, is if you scold the thing, basically, if you try and reinforce the thing not to do this, what it does is in fact get better at deception, not better at being what you want it to be.
Being obedient.
Which
is
a
very human tendency. You tell your kids don't do that, and what the kid learns is don't get caught.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. Yeah, and if you go on Stephen Wolfram's stuff about how to think about some of these computational problems in his concept of the Rulliad, we essentially have to, my understanding of his philosophy is, in order to understand what's actually going to happen, you have to go ahead and compute it, right, or exercise it, and it's only in its explication does that. In a weird way, it's kind of quantum in the sense of it doesn't exist till you compute it. You know what I mean?
Well, that's one way of thinking about it. What our dear friend Alan Kay always used to say is, a computer is a mathematical representation,
right?
And the way, but people think of math only as formulas and balancing equal signs, and he said, no, you run the program. That's the math.
Right.
And so that's, I think, what Wolfram is saying, the same kind of thing, which is, The math is the running of the program. When the programs get incredibly complex, the math gets incredibly complex, and that's where we are. And we could do with some more study of the math, but we aren't going to get much of that. We're getting these little glimpses here and there, but again, it's not going to stop the onrush of products to market and integration of these things into everything we do.
Yeah, no, I agree with Wolfram. He's calling for a whole science of LLMs.
Yeah.
And he has a beautiful example. He just says, hey, look, we don't know how temperature works. Okay, at one level, you set the temperature in the model, you get fantastic results back. You tweak that up just a little bit, and all of a sudden, you get gobbledygook, right? I mean, it's just, and he says we have no idea why that function. Doesn't seem to be a linear function. Don't know, right? Anyway, it's fascinating.
Yeah,
and John,
I think this is Gary Marcus and David Reed are going to have a lot of fun with this one.
Oh yeah.
John, just the last point to what you said the other day, right? We can't even explain how placebo works in humans, right? We don't have to debate if these things are conscious. Who cares? They're thinking, right? That's like let's get on with understanding what that means and what we can do with it and about it.
Oh, exactly. And and now that they're much more recursive and can combinatorially improve themselves by taking different pieces or
well, it depends what you define as improve, right? Here's one that's quote unquote
how about evolve themselves? How about that?
Yes
without assuming a
yes. And you can sort of make the Star Wars story here that somebody's going to turn one of these things to the dark side and then create a whole army of dark siders.
Yeah, we're not in Kansas anymore. All right, unconscious. This baby we're going to put important. All right.
Sure, John. Yep. So moving on to the next one.
Last one is strategery. I have to get used to this guy. I hate his writing style. Go ahead, Doctor.
Yeah. So in this one, he talks about Apple's AI platform pivot potential.
Yeah, a lot in here, man. We got reviews of the the hardware. Interesting point he's making that Apple is has the most capable desktop machine. But kind of what's going on with Siri here. We've got this whole issue of because they have control over your phone. The ability to inject malware is better. More comprehensive in terms of your ability to inject malware. So let's see. Do we have you on this, Adam? I think. Oh no,
it was you, John. But I'll just jump in. Look, I'm with you. I mean, he's making 20 points here. And I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to take away from it. It was a bit of a tough read. It was in some ways too much to digest, while also not really giving me enough to chew on.
I love that. Too much to digest and not enough to chew on. So it kind of bypasses the mouth and goes straight to the stomach.
It's junk food, right? You get a lot, but
I feel like I'm being force fed a whole bunch of ideas.
Yeah,
it's just a bit much.
Okay, actually, I thought it was okay. The basic message is, well, maybe Apple's doing this on purpose, right? They didn't want to deploy Apple Intelligence until they got the new hardware in place because that's their advantage, and because their reputation is seriously in jeopardy if they screw up. So that's what I took away from it. I'm like, okay, but that's just a story we plant around the machinations of a huge company doing lots and lots of things, and there might not be anything that complicated going on. It just might be it's taking them longer than they thought, and they're discovering things along the way. And honestly, this is Apple's MO. They've always been a fast follower. They never worry. I mean, they worry, I'm sure, internally, but they don't really worry about getting into market at a particular time. They worry about protecting their moats, their various moats. And honestly, their switch to making integrated hardware was the wisest decision they ever made. And I know people who were there, and Steve Jobs did not want to do it for a long time, but it was the right decision. And again, this is something Alan Kay had been telling Steve Jobs. I've been listening to him tell this to Steve Jobs since the 80s, that he needed to make his own hardware, and that's their big differentiator. So the rest of it is, it's just I guess he has to write something to fill up the pages. But to me, it was kind of a gossip column.
Yeah, I mean the bad news is their software AI is delayed. The good news is their hardware AI is doing well, and then give them a lot of benefit of the doubt in terms of their announcement versus their delivery. Yeah, okay. I was going to give this an optional.
Optional.
I really just don't like this guy's style of writing. I don't think it's clear. I think it's
No, he
very
definitely tries to do 18 things in one article, and all of which reference prior articles he's written. Just remember how smart I am. This is the basic context of every article.
I was going to say, Tim, I mean, I didn't feed this through an LLM, but I got more out of your synopsis than I got trying to read it. Like I couldn't extract that point. It's a great point. Yeah. I would have loved to have him just write an article that says that.
Well, one thing about our friend,
I'm sure he's written 12 articles that say that, and he will point them all out to us.
If you want to get to a human being that has more content per syllable than pretty much anybody I know, it's Alan Kay. I mean,
yeah,
there's no fluffiness in what that man has to say.
Anyway. Oh, and John, just circling back to your friends at Harvard Business Review that we couldn't give an essential to today. They did get the highest possible praise from Tim, which was that an AI could not have done a better job writing it.
There you go. That's it. That. I know, and they're consultants, ex-consultants too. So Tim's.
So are we optional on this one? Is that
they're optional on
yes,
this one?
Optional.
Right.
Big O.
All right, Ankash. Great. Well, I just wanted to, while we're getting that, I'm here at CERAWeek, which is the Center for Energy Research Associates. It's the world's most important energy conference here in Houston, and I'm down here to see, how is AI really being used here for two things. One, in the energy business, and the second thing is for the conference experience. And it's interesting. Absolutely zero for the conference experience. Nobody's using AI to reinvent that yet. So we'll see what we can do in the fall. But the energy stuff is very interesting because they're using it in ways you would expect. It's for dealing with unstructured data, improving digital twins, finding new things like underground conduit, more accurately, which really helps utility companies. And so, there's a lot going on. AI is really, going in everywhere. And then there was a conversation about, the primary demand for energy, which is going to continue to go up. I don't think it'll be as dire as people say, because I think that we're going to have more and more algorithmic and architectural innovations that will take the compute power necessary down to get to the same level of intelligence. But that's my belief. But as a whole, just there are more and more. It's so that the increasing demand by AI on the power grid, I think, is only about 20% of the incremental demand that's coming along, because so many things are electrifying, and everything from heating your home to dump trucks are getting more electrified. So there's a tremendous demand going up, and data centers are a piece of that. Any announcements, Tim or Adam?
No, I will. Well, I'll make a brief comment that I was at the.
Tim, just real quick, was the OpenAI one? Did you land on important for that? I was leaning towards optional, John.
Oh, which
do you
one?
Recall just what you thought? I know what I wrote in the spreadsheet, but what was your final verdict about the?
That was the creepy one.
The creepy one.
Oh, important.
Okay. Yeah, perfect. Thanks. Yeah. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I was at the HIMSS conference, the biggest health conference of the year, which is good and bad because it's so overwhelming, but it is the biggest health conference of the year. And to your point, first of all, no AI anywhere to improve the conference experience. And you talk about a bad conference experience, just stick 70,000 people in Las Vegas and you start going downhill from there in a hurry.
Do keep an eye on the time, Tim. We got a minute left.
Okay. So just that was it. Just good. Good to see people. That part is still good. Actually, seeing people, talking to people, seeing products is good. AI, not so much.
Adam, any last words?
And John, real quick, we did have a learning lab last night.
Yes.
Yeah, we did. Excellent.
Yeah, with Scott Weller from nfi.ai. about smarter portfolio management and risk analysis. That YouTube will be up on our YouTube channel later today.
Yeah, I thought he was fantastic.
Yeah, interesting. More people are putting topic analysis and non-LLM things into LLM architecture. So definitely an evolutionary architecture.
All right. Do we have a tote board here? Yes, no?
Yes.
All right. So no essentials today, 3 importance, 3 optionals. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will see you tomorrow morning. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Ankaj. Have a great AI day.
Have a good one.